Get out your magic decoder rings, boys and girls, and stay tuned to find out how you can win many valuable prizes.
For a brief instant, there is the silence of outer space. Then the antennas shoot forth, and like the cry of a newborn babe, a tiny voice is heard from the vastness of space, 560 miles above the Earth. A lonely and mysterious cry that forever separates the old from the new. A sound that marks the birth of a new era for mankind.
I'm walking down the street so late at night. Mother's calling and supper's near. Well, I see him standing there, I don't know. One more time now. Oh, got the river, got the river.
Hey fam, welcome to Punks for Progress. I'm Reverend Aaron. This is a What the Fuck report. What we're listening to is this here. It's the Cramps, the Purple Kniff Show. This is a double album, 220 gram gatefold. And what it is it's Lux Interior hosting a radio show. And it's fantastic. This track right here is Jack the Ripper by the One Way Streets from Ohio. Anyway, welcome fam. I got a jam-packed show lined up for you. Of course, I've got a bunch of records picked out. I've got some art videos to look at. I've got some videos from Submedia. We're going to be looking at some prisoner struggle stuff today. And I also wanted to do something we haven't done on the What the Fuck report in a while, which is news from the revolutionary struggle via the Punks for Progress Facebook main page. Where we'll just run through basically roughly about 24 hours worth of posts. We'll see what all the P4P comrades that are admins over there have been sharing, and from various actions and links to upcoming actions, video from actions, cool art, who knows what we'll find over there. But yeah, I've got a number of other surprises picked out, and if we have time after all that, I did put in the queue the Senate hearing from yesterday. I'm recording this on Friday, where that piece of shit lying grifter Andy No testified.
By the one-way streets from northeastern Ohio, USA, and this is the Purple Kniff from Los Angeles, California.
Anyway, I do have the hearing that Andy No testified at, that lying ass fucking embedded with violent far-right terrorists, white supremacists, fucking thugs and shit. This grifter Andy No that again testified in front of Congress. Like I said, if we have time after all the stuff I have queued up, after news from the revolutionary struggle, maybe we'll go through that in our last hour. But with all that said, fam, and with no further whatever, it's a What the Fuck report.
I said if you want to wait. Oh no, I gotta go now.
And I'd like to dedicate this one to Punks for Progress. Punks for Progress. This is for my brothers and Punks for Progress.
Punks for Progress, never anarchy. Fight for your liberty. We don't want your government. We don't need your services. I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarchist.
Punks for Progress on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks, brother.
That sounds right up my alley.
It's always a good day when you hear a punk say the word righteous.
Okay, what's queuing up now, and what will probably play an ad first. So let's mute. It's one of those you got to play through it ads about milk and whatever. Okay, so this is from Now This, and the video is called "The Significance of Illinois Ending Cash Bail," and this is so significant, fam, because anyone not familiar with sort of the basics of abolitionism may not be aware that bail basically just serves as a way to punish people for being poor and then really forces them into further poverty. If you're already poor and you can't afford to pay the bail to get out of jail, whether you have actually committed the crime or not, because remember, if you're in a bail situation, you haven't been convicted of anything. But if you can't afford it, you may be forced to stay in jail. And then what does that mean? You don't go to work the next day. And especially in a pandemic where people's ability to actually maintain a job during this pandemic is even more limited. You could lose your job. And then now you have fines and you've paid the money for the bail or, whatever it, or not the bail, but you've paid your fines and then, you've done time and now you've lost your job and whatever it was you were there for, there's going to be a price attached to that. Anyway, it compounds, fam. It compounds. And it's just, it's ridiculous. And here's another thing too, that I want to point out, that there's so much crucial stuff that's covered in this video. But one other thing that it doesn't cover is that when you're unable to make bail, you appear before the court and before the judge in whatever county issued or state issued clothing. Okay, and you come in shackles more often than not. And so you already take on the physical appearance of some type of criminal. That's why when you see like wealthy people, like all the people that Trump pardoned, or someone like a Harvey scumfuck Weinstein, like these types of people, where they come to court in suits and not shackled, that's because they had enough to make bail. And they could go home and they could put on clothes to come to court. But they could also, now again, if you're poor, you can't go home and maintain your life. It's completely on hold. And if you're already living a precarious fucking working class or poor lifestyle, there's in many ways no recovering from that. And so a lot of times people will just plead guilty to something so that they can get out of jail to get back to their job and get to their life, whether they may have done it or not. And anyway, this is a really fantastic piece from Now This. Not always the most reliable source, but this piece is great. And here we go.
Be the main determining factor in whether somebody will be in or out of jail. Courts can more clearly make decisions about who should be in and who should be out.
Illinois becomes first state to end cash bail. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a sweeping criminal justice reform bill this week, including ending cash bail for release from jail.
This legislation marks a substantial step toward true safety, true fairness, and true justice. The changes that will be brought about by this new law will bring more justice and more fairness to many who have so often been forgotten.
Sharon Mitchell Jr. is the director. Sorry, hold on. Let me back that up just a little bit. Sharon Mitchell Jr. is the director of the Illinois Justice Project and has been fighting to end the practice.
One justice system for folks that are out that actually get the opportunity to participate in their offense, and another justice system which incentivizes people to plead guilty, not because they believe that they've done something wrong, but because they just want to get out of jail.
Cash bail has been called a poor people's tax by critics and has left some people who are unable to afford bail detained for extended periods as they wait trial. It also disproportionately affects people people of color.
The vast majority of people who touch the criminal justice system will come out. They will have to operate in our society, and too often we put them in worse positions. So the studies are clear. Short-term detention actually makes it more likely that a person will be rearrested.
While Illinois is the first state to end cash bail entirely, other states have restricted its use. A 2018 study from New Jersey found jail population was significantly reduced, and the return for court appearances stayed nearly the same. Mitchell says cash bail can set someone back in different ways. You catch that? Let's back that up. And the return for court appearances stayed nearly the same. Clearly, I'm sure there was some type of drop in people who made it to court. I'm sure that there was some more people who didn't come to court when they were supposed to. Okay? But stayed nearly the same. That shows me that that number was marginal and insignificant. That the vast majority of people appeared for their court cases. Like, people don't want to let that shit, either if they got killed, if they are guilty of it, they want to move on, get it taken care of and move on. Or if they're not, they want to prove that they're not and have that opportunity to do so. Rarely do people take off. And usually flight risk is determined and no bail is set. It's like, no, you're staying here and there's no bail. If it's determined by the court that there's a significant reason to think that you're a flight risk, then you just keep the person in jail. But the vast majority of cases that come before our civil, criminal, justice courts and whatever, they're not flight risks. These are people who are going to come to court and appear and do what they got to do to deal with what's going on with this interaction and this interaction with the state mechanisms of law. Right? Anyway, let's get back to it. Mitchell says cash bail can set someone back in different ways.
What studies tell us is that when you put somebody in jail, especially in a short-term period, that you're actually increasing the criminogenic factors that exist in their life. For example, I saw the public defender all the time. When somebody would go to jail for a few weeks, they would lose their job if they had a job. They would, if they had to pay rent, they would get behind rent. If they had anything going on in terms of education, that would be lost. So you do that short-term jailing, that person comes back out, and they're in a worse place than they were before.
Mitchell says ending cash bail does not mean everyone will be released. It simply means judges can't use money as a factor for detainment.
Too often people think about this as just kind of like a release, just about release, that everybody will be released. I think we believe that there'll be more folks that will be released, but we also feel like we'll make better decisions about who should be and who shouldn't be. The current situation allows money to make that decision, and I think the consensus is that that's a bad way of determining incarceration.
The end of cash bail will be rolled out slowly and take full effect in 2023. All right, what's going to queue up next here, fam, which will probably be preceded by an ad, of course, is a Vice piece, and I don't cover or share a lot of Vice stuff. They're so unpredictable. Sometimes they do really great work. Sometimes it's absolute dog shit. And it's hard to tell, but what you're going to get, and that's because they just have so many people that are contributing to them. And anyway, but this piece is just really fantastically done. And I'm gonna read along with the opening part, and then I'm just gonna let it play, and then I've got some music video queued up, and then we'll get into some vinyl and look at some art. But this really just struck me as powerful and very well put together. And the instant I saw it, I wanted to share it on a What the Fuck Report. So actually, I'm gonna go ahead and read the description. Like I said, it's from Vice. Description is very short. As wildfires tore through parts of Oregon, the state's only women's prison was evacuated. We animate the story from one inmate who says they had to riot to get basic essentials. The prison wildfire evacuation that led to a riot. On September 10, 2020, a staff at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility evacuated 1,303 inmates because of the massive wildfires in Oregon. On September 16, 2020, one inmate, Lori Mosley, mailed this essay from the prison. This is her voice.
We were cuffed in pairs, sardines in a square steel can. Behind us, hundreds of women filled the plastiform benches of multiple buses, vans, and Brinks trucks. Many women haven't left the facility in decades. They exist in a state-operated time capsule. Most haven't seen a car in years, except for the small, wide economy model that circles the outer edge of the razor wire fence. 24 hours, 10 miles per hour, over and over, looking like a lost pizza delivery driver. We had questions. Can I bring a towel? What about my medication refill? Can I bring a Bible? Will there be telephones? All inquiries were met with, you need to shut up and listen. Soon we were merging into end-of-the-world traffic. Women grabbed the edges of their seats. Throttle, brake, throttle, brake. The women worried about their friends and family. These are the connections that hold the lifeline to the free world. No family visits since February. A hug would be great. Smoke from the fires made visibility minimal. I noticed the driver's seatbelt swinging with the momentum of the accelerator. Shit, no seatbelt. Hell, we didn't have seatbelts on either. If he lost control, we'd bounce around like a jar full of crickets. Over the edge and down the canyon. I sat back and closed my eyes. Throttle, brake, corner. Throttle, brake. Man, I really needed to pee. The speaker was blasting Shania Twain, telling me, feels like a woman. I didn't even feel human. I found out later women in the other vehicles were peeing in cups, vomiting. A few had to change their menstrual products and were instructed to throw tampons out the window. I'm guessing they didn't feel like women either. We arrived at Deer Ridge Correctional Facility. My need to urinate was all I could handle. The truck came to a stop and the officers got out. They started eating pizza and smoking cigarettes. Really? Union break time? I stood outside the open door. 20 feet away was two restrooms. I could see the promised land. Two officers stood as gatekeepers. I looked over my right shoulder to see a woman bent over with her hand cupping her crotch. Officer, can we please use the restroom? She didn't answer. I asked again, hey, we're about to pee ourselves. She responded, go ahead, I'm not stopping you. There's the concrete. The two officers laughed. Another officer graciously obliged. I overthanked him. I felt like the woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears and dried him with her hair. It was a form of salvation he was providing us. Then shit, suddenly it was Aretha Franklin stuck in my head singing, you make me feel like a natural woman. My unit didn't get to bed until 1 a.m. No towels, no showers with hot water, no shower curtains, the stalls visible to officers both female and male. Many toilets not flushing, women without beds, sleeping on the floor. The next day, no phone, no email, no TV news channel, no way of knowing about the well-being of our friends, family, or homes. They brought in a few cases of maxi pads, tampons, and toilet paper, an appeasement offering. The next day, the unit officer yelled, lock down, back to your cells. I had a view across the yard into the area where some women were out using yard phones, watching television. They weren't on lockdown. We wanted to talk to our families too, and watch the news. We wanted medical attention and food. I yelled, bullshit! I yelled for phones and for the firing of the officer who stood between me and the toilet. Then the women in my section began yelling, fuck the police. We want towels. Fuck the police. It looked like a very strange Mardi Gras. Women ran out of their rooms without shirts, throwing tampons, maxi pads, and toilet paper rolls. We were sending back their gifts. Some women didn't do anything. They said, we're better than this. I say, no, we're not. You can't get better than this. We were rioting, and it felt good. The administrator ordered the cell doors closed. They hauled off 5 women bound in handcuffs. Then the officers pushed a wheeled cart through the doorway. On it was a large screen TV. We cheered, yelling, thank you. They opened our doors. Within a few hours, a large supply of towels and vinyl shower curtains rolled in. Then they brought in a pile of sack lunches. They let the 5 women who were arrested go. Finally, they brought us paper, pens, shampoo, and a change of clothes. We took back our dignity. Shania Twain still playing in my head.
Mosley confirmed that inmates were allowed to bring medication with them. In January, she was released. Vice News asked CCCF and the Oregon Department of Corrections to respond to the allegations laid out in Mosley's essay. The Department of Corrections sent this statement, quote, mistakes were made and adults in custody were more than inconvenience, but staff made rapid adjustments to address the unexpected and the unanticipated. Department of Corrections also did many things extremely well. Wow, they said that about themselves. They did things extremely well. Astounding. I guess it depends on what your interpretation of extremely well is. A spokesperson said the Department of Corrections wasn't aware of a protest or riot led by female inmates, but confirmed that approximately 200 men protested at the same facility. Jesus Christ, it's like patriarchal preference to even factions of rioting fucking human beings enslaved for profit. The Department of Corrections shared letters from inmates who were sympathetic to CCC staff during the evacuation. One person wrote, quote, we were shown that if the building was on fire, would we get left? No. Which is a question us inmates ponder every once in a while. Interesting. There you go, fam. That's from Vice News. Now, what's queuing up next is a fucking sick-ass video by Agathocles, available over at the YouTube channel Death by Digital. Enjoy. The song's called A for Arrogance. Fucking love it, man. All right, I said I would play some of his art. This is our... Before I said I was going to play more of his art because I enjoy it. I wasn't lying, and I really do enjoy it. This is Greg Simpkins' art. The piece is called Wonderland Makeover with Detailed Acrylic Painting Techniques with Making Friends. And while we watch it, I have queued up over here. song's called Flamethrower Love, fam. You know what happened, fam, when that mic fell over? Made the album skip, so we're going to start it over. By the Breeze. faces, fam.
Oh, granddad, I laughed at all his words.
Ooh la la.
A bitter man, he spoke of women's ways. They trap you and they use you before you even know. For love is blind and you're far too kind. Don't ever let it show. I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was younger, I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was stronger, the can such a pretty show to steal your heart away. The backstage back on earth again. The dressing rooms are great. They come on strong and it ain't too long, but I make you feel a man. But love is blind and you soon will find you're just a boy again. When you wanna live, you get a cheek, makes you wonder where you are. If you want some more, then she's fast asleep. She's just twinkling with the stars. For a young grandson, there's nothing I can say. You'll have to learn just like me, and that's the hardest way. Ooh la la, ooh la la, la la, yeah. I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was younger, I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was stronger.
All right, fam. What I have queued up here is, believe it or not, an Associated Press piece, which I would think the average person who cares at all about Panther history would shudder to think that the Associated Press would cover anything about them, because they'll probably bring some pro-capitalist, fucking pro-imperialist bent to the coverage. But this is surprisingly very cool. And it's not really about Panther history. It's about the Oakland community, really. And I just thought I came across this, I don't know, a couple days ago, and I just thought it was cool and wanted to share it with y'all. So, like I said, it's from the Associated Press. The piece is called Oakland Paints New Picture of Black Panther Party. A homeowner in Oakland, California, birthplace of the Black Panther Party, commissioned an artist to paint a mural of her house featuring women of the political organization active from the 1960s to the 1980s. February 23rd was the date this aired.
I purchased my house here in West Oakland because of the history of the Black Panther Party, and I wanted to be close to that. I wanted to be around that. They lived in this neighborhood. The first breakfast program was in West Oakland. So a lot of the activities and a lot of their survival programs were based specifically in West Oakland. 70% of the Panther Party was made up of women. And at the height of their membership, you know, you had chapters that were 3-to-1 women and 5-to-1 women. Chapters were led by women. Chapters were opened by women.
It looks brilliant, and I can't believe you did it so fast again.
So we have one woman protesting. She'll have buttons that are relevant to all of the stuff that was going on then and now. And then we have the woman with the rifle kind of watching over everything, and then I wanted to bring that all together with the woman who is in her medical outfit and holding her child, and have that love mother-child relationship at the forefront of this.
The Black Panther Party wasn't a group of terrorists, and it wasn't a bunch of men holding guns. They picked up guns when guns were drawn on them. You know, they were protecting themselves, they were protecting their families, they were protecting their children, and protecting their community from police brutality, which is still relevant today.
Like, who wouldn't defend their family and their community when they're being murdered, when they're being oppressed, when they can't get jobs or housing, you know what I mean? So I think that the rest of America is ready to look at the complexities and the depth of the struggle on a systematic level.
The Panthers were in the past. Everything that they did, everything that they fought for, everything that they believed in, and everything that they were hoping to change, we're still doing that. We're still hoping to change that.
Right? I just thought that was fucking cool, fam. And I hope you thought it was cool too. Now, what we have here, this is Submedia. And before we get into it, let me show you what it says here. I haven't watched this video yet. Again, this popped up in it was posted a couple days ago, and I instantly threw it in the watch later to feature today. But the description reads, on February 15th, the barricades on Argyle Street, Mackenzie Road, and the Highway 6 bypass were taken down as a gesture of good faith by Haudenosaunee land defenders from 6 nations. For the past 4 months, these barricades have defended hashtag 1492 Land Back Lane from encroachment by the Ontario Provincial Police, OPP. In this video, 1492 Land Back Lane spokesperson Skylar Williams explains the motivations for taking down the barricades and describes how this land reclamation fits within the growing resurgence of Indigenous resistance across Turtle Island. On February 5th, I already read that.
So we scaled back our barricades on Argyle Street, Mackenzie, and the Highway 6 bypass. Roads that we've seen dug up for the last 4 months. And so we've did our best to make sure that we're listening to community folks that are interested in seeing those roads open and wanting to see us move towards a peaceful resolution to this. The OPP still have warrants for all of us, as well as the permanent injunction that still remains in place on Land Back Lane. And so we are quite hesitant in our trust of the police at this moment. And I think it's a matter of time before the OPP start getting pressure again to enforce that injunction, as well as enforce the warrants on myself and many others here. They've given some assurance to say that they're not trying to escalate things further, but at the same time, we've heard those assurances before. We heard those assurances before August 5th when our people were shot at and tasered and dragged from our lands. This was a peaceful camp. 100 OPP officers came in that day to arrest 9 of us. Shot at our people, tasered our people. One guy was tasered in the neck and in the head. The other was dragged along the pavement. He's got scars down the side of his face now that he'll have for the rest of his life. The OPP have a choice to make as to whether or not to escalate this situation into something that has been for the last 7 months now, that has seen roads dug up, that has seen highways and railways shut down. I think a message has been made loud and clear that if you continue to do this, this will not be tolerated, and we will do everything that we can to defend our people and our lands. There's nothing that those guns and those cops, their jails, their courts, or their injunctions can do to dissuade us from pushing forward. This is our land. This is Haudenosaunee territory, and it's going to stay that way. All of these agreements that have been made with our ancestors, these ancestors gave their blood, their sweat, their tears for this land. What kind of disrespect would that be for me to say that they did that for nothing? And so for us, the end goal in all of this is land back. Whatever it takes to make that happen is what we're willing to do. The OPP has an opportunity to force their government to come to the table with a nation-to-nation relationship building process that sees our nation recognized as it is, as a nation. It doesn't matter to us whether you vote in band council, you are a Confederacy supporter, you're a Mohawk worker. Like, these are all divisions that have happened in our community by the hand of the federal government, by the hand of the RCMP before the OPP. We've said over and over again that, this has been about unity and this is for everybody. It doesn't matter which family, which faction. We all know that this is our land. We all know unequivocally that this is Haudenosaunee territory. We've had a ton of solidarity statements put out by lots and lots of folks across the country. The Wet'suwet'en, the Secwepemc, Mi'kmaq, folks from Kitigan-Zibi, and all these folks have come out and visited and came out to Land Back Lane to express that solidarity. I think this is one thing that was made really clear last year with Shut Down Canada, but seeing railways and highways and waterways blocked from coast to coast. Our people, regardless of what nation you come from across this country, there were 300 plus nations here before settlers arrived. And those nations had many, many old alliances between them. And so those alliances are something that we look to uphold. When the OPP come in to here, or RCMP in Wet'suwet'en or in Secwepemc territories or Kitigan-Zibi, like, trust me, we will do whatever we can to lift their voices as well. This idea that you can take advantage of Indigenous communities across the country with pipelines and highways and railways, those days are over.
Fantastic stuff. Sub Media is so worth the sub, fam. Always. Yeah, so this is from the double album comp Times Square. This is The Ruts with Babylon is Burning. And the artist we're looking at here is Michelle Kohler Art. Time-lapse oil painting, super large, 2 vivid colors, neon dreams. Gary Newman from the same comp. This track is called Down in the Park.
a friend code 5. I was in a car crash, or was it the war? But I've never been quite the same. Little white lies like I was there. Like it was built in one day. You can watch the humans trying to run. Oh look, there's a rape machine. I'd go outside if it looked the other way. You wouldn't believe the things they do. Until the sun cries morning, down in the park with friends of mine. We are not lovers, we are not romantics, we are here to serve you. A different face, but the words never change.
Okay, fam. I think we should probably get started on what I promised, news from the revolutionary struggle via the Punks for Progress Facebook main page. So there's a number of people who admin over here. I should probably give a massive shout out to SoCal Shannon, though, who is the primary admin over here and really, really holds it down and does such an exceptional, phenomenal job of keeping track of actions nationally. Not only upcoming actions, but videos and report back stuff from actions after they've happened, and a lot of anti-fascist stuff, and just a lot of real proper leftist struggle stuff going on over here. I thought I would play a little bit of the ventures. There's going to be video and stuff here, and we can turn down the ventures when we get to it. But thought it'd make a nice background soundtrack while we go through. And what you'll see here is obviously the pin post of our this week's What the Fuck Fam Chat, which we're going to start doing these, hopefully, every week. We'll record them on Sundays. We do have, as a project, on Sundays, we do have a weekly meeting, and we decided we need to, record an hour-long, roughly hour or so discussion each week. And what we really do is we'll discuss whatever anyone who happens to be available and can hang with us from the fam wants to talk about, but we also cover whatever video or content that we've been uploading to the YouTube channel in the week prior, right? And we'll kind of have analysis and discussions of them, and who knows what other stuff. But anyway, this was the first sort of successful installment of that, which is the pin post on our Facebook page, but it's also available clearly here on the YouTube channel. But it is the What the Fuck Fam Chat, Anti-Fascist Coalition Building, and more. Please go check it out. Biden. Stop bombing Syria. U.S. hands off Iran. There you go. Lucha por socialismo. Struggle for socialism. Struggle la lucha.org. Struggle-la-lucha.org. No war for Wall Street and big oil profits. People need improved vaccine distribution, stimulus checks, a higher minimum wage, and health care for all. Not war. Hear, hear. What's this? Bush in office. Never 9/11, never forget, United we stand. Obama in office. Oh, looking forward, right? And if you'll see, yeah, that's a nice tail there at the end of it. And here we go. Trump in office, make America great again. I can't really see what that says, but Biden in office, Black Lives Matter, yes, we can. And that comes to us via Left Voice. This is, I'm not going to take the time to read this now, but OPP.org, far-right protest brawler assists with security at Clark County GOP meeting. So that's not Clark County, Nevada. That's Clark County, Oregon. But this is Tiny Tutosi. This is Tiny. This is a fucking felon, convicted felon, violent terrorist, convicted fucking felon thug that's providing security. He's just a dude who randomly beats the shit out of like people half his size and women and shit. If you don't believe me, go look at our video, Proud Boys, obsessed with violence and terrorizing women, beating up women and the fascination with violence. Anyway, just go to our channel, type in the search Proud Boys, and the video will come up, and you'll see the black and yellow thumb. And it's numerous accounts of this dude just randomly beating the shit out of people half his size, including women. But yeah, he's security for a fucking GOP meeting. Anyway, read the piece. But I mean, come on. The Republican Party is completely aligned with the worst elements of the street level fucking fascist thug fucking groups. This is from Bonfire Collective. All of the indigenous land protectors and their non-indigenous accomplices arrested earlier today have been released through their disgusting mistreatment by the police remains unaddressed. Though their disgusting mistreatment by the police remains unaddressed. The bulldozers hired to begin paving the way for 8 multi-million-dollar homes have left at least till Monday. Nonetheless, a bunch of protesters will be staying at the San Marcos foothills overnight and most likely over the coming days as well. Please go help them and hold it down if you can. Make no mistake, this struggle is far from over, and we thus have to remain vigilant. Follow Save San Marcos Foothills on Facebook and Instagram, and Seeds of Forest Defense on Instagram for the latest updates and calls to action from the protest site. These photos were taken earlier today at the entrance to the foothills, and they showcase the awesome and sacred power with which our Chumas and other indigenous comrades imbued today's action. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts for guiding us, and we are committed to supporting them however we can moving forward. We hope all of you are too. Fuck them houses. I love it. Fuck them houses. It's starting to look like repeats. Okay. If you're the Bonfire Collective, fam, I have here Fizzle, 50 minutes. Okay, yeah, so we're not going to watch that. But New York City Stonewall protests African Diaspora March. Cruise on over to the channel if you'd like to take a look at that. That's from Rod Weber. 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Yes, we will definitely watch this. Yesterday at 6:48 a.m., this is the video for which they're hauling me into court, he says. My crime, saying, quote, fuck Donald Trump, fuck white nationalists, burning a U.S. flag, and conducting a satanic ritual during the October 2020 Super Happy Fun America rally, which was a hardcore, full-on fascist fucking action. Don't let that silly name fool you, fam. Super Happy Fun America is hardcore fucking far-right terrorist fucking fascist bullshit. And he's linked Boston police headquarters are failing hard at both sides narrative.
Antifa members conduct a cult ritual in Boston streets, eat bloody heart, symbolic of Trump.
That Donald Trump has hurt in this past 4 years of president. Fuck Donald Trump! And fuck all these alt-right white nationalists that keep coming here. Fuck Super Happy Fun America! Fuck Super Happy your helmets, kiddos. Rod Weber's here to call out bullshit whether you like it or not.
Is Mr. Weber being detained, sir?
I'm a documentarian.
There's a fine tradition of trolling for a cause throughout history.
It's like he's putting a strap on and owning Putin. Getting him. I am, of course, the only candidate who will open the case about Epstein. You're a corporate shell, Mike!
You wrote the Patriot Act, ushering in 1,000 years of George Orwell.
We're calling out the bullshit that is part of the system that we're living under.
Well, how can you protect our freedom when our kids are dying?
If there's a virus out there, you take it, you get it in, and you get rid of it.
You know, it's a fine line between a cop and a fucking criminal.
Well, they're all criminals.
Well, the New York Times where we endorse 2 people. We only get 1 vote.
We have never had anything like this in American history.
This whole argument about the violent left falls apart when you stand in front of a Proud Boy, because they throw the first punch.
Talk, talk, talk! Talk, talk, talk! Antifa is not an organization.
Daryl Lamont Jenkins.
Antifa is an idea.
I think that is a great example of ethical trolling at its best.
There you go, fam. It's basically a trailer for Rod Weber's newest film, 2020, The Dumpster Fire. He takes on Jimmy Dore in it. As you can see, he's got Daryl Lamont Jenkins there, Greg Hausch, who is from one of the early anonymous people, but he also does anti-fascist work these days. Anyway, Rod Weber, fam. Definitely worth following on all social media platforms. He's not necessarily, like a revolutionary leftist, socialist, but he fucking hates the fash with a legitimate honesty, and he knows how to troll them good. I like Rod. What is this? This is from Fem Strike Back PDX, wishing a safe and happy Thursday to all. We can't take credit for this image. They can't take credit for it, but it's great. Anti-homeless, I wish all anti-homeless architecture designers a very die. It's fucking funny. Adam Rainstopper video. What's this? Okay. This is from the Socialist Program with Brian Becker. Their protest forced new investigation into police killing of Elijah McClain, but now they face the rest of their lives in prison. A damning new independent investigation into the police murder of Elijah McClain in Aurora, Colorado has been released, but the only people facing charges so far in this case are the activists who led the movement for justice for Elijah McClain. Imagine that. Lillian House joins the show. Lillian and other leaders of a mass movement in the Denver, Aurora, Colorado area demanding justice for Elijah McClain was herself arrested in a coordinated police attack on September 17, 2020. She was charged with multiple felonies and is awaiting trial. If convicted, Lillian House could be imprisoned for half a century. Jesus Christ. So there's a link to the pod there, and there's the image from the action. Biden is now officially the third president in a row to bomb Syria. Third. Forever wars, fam. Make money. Some kind of TikTok. Nina Simone. Putting a spotlight on artists that joined in celebrating Nina Simone's 88th birthday. 27 seconds? I have 27 seconds.
Fish in the sea, you know how
Nice. Uh-oh. I have very mixed feelings about this. Being a resident of Reno, Nevada, I'm not a huge fan, even though I am a huge fan of this show, Reno 911, Reno 911. It portrays the entire Reno community as, like, stupid and, anyway, but it's fucking funny as fuck show. And they're coming back, and this time, QAnon's under investigation. Great, so I'm sure it's going to be good, but it's going to make all my fellow Renoites look like QAnon idiots. See you soon on Paramount Plus. Sam Tyler, downtown Minneapolis looking warm and inviting 2 weeks ahead of the trial of Derek Chauvin, the killer of George Floyd. So this is them preparing for the trial. Weeks ahead of time. Is the impression I'm getting from what this post is trying to assert. You know, and if you contrast that to the response from the police in the Capitol on the 6th, which was basically just non-existent, they let them run rampant, to this type of prep. It's just telling, fam. It's telling. You already know about this, fam. U.S. launches military airstrikes against Iranian militants in Syria. Iranian militants? It's just like coming out of NPR. Who knows, you know? I mean... What's this? Oh, this would be, this is Mark Paulo's channel. Live stream from, we covered it just a minute ago, earlier post here on our Facebook. Stonewall Black Liberation March, February 25th, 2021 in New York City. So you follow Marco Paulo on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. This is PSL's channel, A Nation in Crisis, Mass Incarceration in Black America. This live streamed yesterday. I got to show you this. We were laughing, fam. The P4P fam was, because it was totally like Marxist-Leninist communist hour. All three of these streamed at the same time. PSL, Workers' World Party, and the RevComs. All three of those streamed at the exact same time yesterday. It was kind of funny. But if you're a Marxist-Leninist, and you want to see what's going on with three different types of Marxist-Leninist orgs, there you go. We've provided those options for you to draw your own conclusions from, fam. This Workers' World Party video is called Eyewitness Texas, Climate Crisis, COVID, and Capitalism. We'll get back to that post I just scrolled past. But this from the RevComs is the RNL, or the Revolution Nothing Less Show, episode 41. The Oppression of Women and Climate Change, How Capitalism is Holding Us Back. So even though I'm an anarchist, I like blocking up and promoting the work that various communist groups do for, abused, oppressed, and marginalized people, man. I'm with that shit. This is just funny. So, God created only two genders. God, she's such a piece of shit. Fuck a God that only created two genders. And no. Just stupid people who are overcome with fear and hate created the notion of two genders. Greedy fucking scumbag capitalists that really solidified these notions of genders in order to divide people. And you want to keep people locked in those boxes, you fucking piece of shit. But Father Fury had this to say in response, which I thought was wonderful. Which one do you identify as? Because I'm pretty sure you're a fucking chud. Pretty much sums it up, fam, wouldn't you say? I hope 27 pianos fall on her fucking head and then a bus runs over what's left of it. What I want to do to people who refuse to wear a mask. Right? Like, right? From Gritty 2020. Much love to Gritty 2020. Every fucking time. Absolutely. Take your activism to the next level, Albuquerque. At Affirm, AF3IRM on Instagram, at Affirm. Organizing at affirm.org. Join today. The militant sisterhood is calling. Open to women of color, women as a political category. The transnational feminist organization, chapters and organizing committees in Los Angeles, New York, Hawaii, San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Twin Cities, Las Vegas, and San Diego. Let's read the description here. Hello, Albuquerque. Affirm is a national organization of women engaged in transnational feminist, anti-imperialist activism and dedicated to the fight against oppression in all its forms. As a reminder, membership is open to women of color, women as a political category. If you're in Albuquerque, looking for a political home and are interested in joining, DM us at Affirm or email organizing@affirm.org to get connected. We look forward to hearing from you. Hashtag feminist fight fascism. Hashtag forward to a feminist future. Hashtag Affirm. Very nice. And here's a channel if you really want to go report anti-communist action. Look at some of these titles. Ted was right. Speaking of Ted Kaczynski. This is just some asshole that trolled our YouTube, and let's just be aware, they're called anti-communist action. I wish I was in the land of cotton is one of the titles of their videos, and this is black women transposed behind a Confederate flag. It's fucking disgusting. And a number of videos in relation to praising Ted Kaczynski, pushing racism. This is a blatantly racist terrorist fucking channel. Clearly violating YouTube's terms of service. If you wanted to go over there and report shit, that's on you. This is from Centro CSO. Julian Castellan is a political science major at Rio Hondo College. She is a proud member of Centro CSO and Padres contra la Privatización. Come hear her speak about her organizing in our 4th annual International Women's Day event, March 6th at noon. DMS for Zoom link. Rio Hondo College, I do believe, is LA. So I'm imagining that's 12 p.m. Pacific time. Juliana Castellan is a political science major at Rio Hondo College and plans to transfer to USC Davis this fall. She is a proud member of Central CSO since 2017 and member of Padre contra la Privatización since 2016. There you go. You can get a Zoom link. That sounds like something that would interest you, fam. This is YouTube link. Happy birthday, son. Elijah Jovan McLean. via Party for Socialism and Liberation Denver, on what would have been Elijah's 25th birthday. His mother released this powerful and heartbreaking video. This is why we fight. We must see justice for Elijah McClain and fight to make sure the police who patrol our communities can't terrorize and murder the people here at will. I think we should probably take a look at it, fam. All right. So it reads, special thank you to song authors and writers, Sung Josh Lee, Jessa Love, Jordan Polovina, Cole Cannell, Joe Lassard, John Shockness, Christopher Bennett, James Laurie, Jeff McAllister, Nasir Malik, Tyler Imbrogno, Chris Juris, and Esther Juris. Is there a description? Yes, there is. So the channel is Eagle Eyes Readings and Spiritual Warfare on Earth. For my son Elijah, your life and death will never be forgotten. You are with the Most High God now, and your enemies didn't win. Son, you won the race, and I honor you daily. I'm going to sub that. Gave that a sub. So this is 7 minutes. I have not seen this. I'm going to put some closed captioning on. I don't know if there'll be things I need to read along with. We're watching this for the first time together, fam, but here we go.
This is a tragic story of a life that ended way too soon.
Just an introverted man that barely made the age of 23. It's hard to believe that such a kind and sweet individual could have been treated like a hardened criminal. It's despicable, unarmed, is it that hard to not treat a man like he's at large in his own damn backyard? No, a lover, not a fighter, a self-starter, an independent thinker who donated his time to something bigger. A true merchant of love through hugs and back rubs. It's just so sad. Truly a tragedy. An angel on earth was lost to brutality. Gross incompetence and a lack of all morality. These are melodies for the stray cats, loud enough they can break glass. Close your eyes, you could taste gas burning inside your face mask. He would run that narrow straight path as a young black man who gave back to the playgrounds he was raised there. Ain't no way now to replace that. Seeking justice in a haystack when a hate crime can be state backed, and the untrained modern slave masters won't contain their misplaced angst. We won't stand down, we won't say thanks to a nation off the train tracks. What a shame that they took aim at him. His melodies for the stray cats play on.
Buzzards will cry out under the streetlights. Follow the voice back home. Run away back home. You scream it out loud. Your name in the moonlight, so we can get you home.
Back the tears from welling as I write this verse, and it still hurts. Staring at my melanated skin, my blessing, my gift, and it's my curse. What's the matter with America? Why are we still up in this fight? Can you justify the dark acts that deprived us all of this man's light? We deserve to live safe and free equally, and not to fight to survive. Shouldn't have to get snuffed out first for the world to cherish our lives. Every violin note emanating from his bow ray of sunshine. Every smile so infectious it could warm your heart and even open your mind. Made a target just because of what he wore on his head while walking to the store. 3 numbers dialed and the telephone is all it took, and now there's no more. Witnessing the lack of justice yet again. Each time it's getting harder. Falling body cams and ketamines, the recipe to make another martyr. No, it's not right, no, it's not funny. Those who mocking this should be ashamed. You can take the man away, but we won't let you all extinguish his flame. He was more than just a hashtag, more than a statistic, y'all, he has a name. That's why we raise our fist and demand justice for Elijah McClain.
Thousands will cry out under the streetlights. Follow the voice back home. Run away back to home. This is our way back home.
This is a song that should never exist, for a life that should not have been lost. In a hospital bed that should not have been built, for a wound that should not have been caused by an assault, by an adult. Shouldn't have had the right to demand a response. Final result, somebody's child is killed, somebody who smiled and still joy. This is a song that should never exist, for a man who should not have been terrorized, whose kindness and whose innocence should have never required to be verified. We never met, but I saw your picture on the internet, with your chin resting on a violin for an audience of cats and kittens. Anyone can see that you were generous, anyone can see you never been a threat, and you never should have had to demonstrate your humanity, but did it anyway. Now 1,000 people on the interstate say your name, cause every soul's a different universe. Your day of justice will soon be served, but if they had just listened to your words. This is a song that should never exist, for a soul who should not have been brutalized, born to a mother too young to be mourning a son, too young to be eulogized. But in spite of the pain, your recital became a symphony now. In spite of the shame, your empathy's rinsing the streets like a tidal wave rising for change. Elijah McClain. This is the cry.
This is a tragic story of a life that ended too soon.
Follow the voice back home.
These words are spoken love, our lives are asking rise.
We're screaming out your name in the moonlight, so we can get you home.
So raise a violin, play a song and honor him. I'm not different from you, I don't feel so different. I just wanna love, I just wanna live, just for tonight, just for tonight. I'm not different from you, I don't feel so oh, I just wanna live, I just wanna love. Different to love, different to me. Can't you just see I'm just trying to do me? Won't you just let us be alive? Hope my brothers and sisters survive. If that's not enough to not take my life, I guess I'll just spread my wings and fly. Maybe someday my song will reach you all. Maybe someday my love will lift you up.
Wow, fam. There's nothing I can add to that. It's powerful. Thank you, SoCal Shan, for sharing that to the page. I'm assuming it was you who shared it. Just wow. Here from Carlos M. Montes. Rally to demand Pacifica Corporation not transfer or evict our seniors, elders in Boyle Heights at Sakura Gardens. Jesus Christ. At Lincoln Park in Los Angeles. via Bayan, USA, Northern California, live at the San Francisco PH Consulate to commemorate the 35th anniversary of People Power Revolution. It was 47-minute action. League of Filipino Students, SFSU, yesterday at 1:05. What's this? Oh, this is day 2 of the Dollars Against Democracy, Domestic Terrorist Financing in the Aftermath of the attack on the 6th. So that was from yesterday. That's part 2. Like I said, I have the part 1 in the queue that looks like we're probably going to have time to go through today. And this is from Southern Poverty Law Center. I'll go ahead and go through this. At the first 2020 presidential debate on September 29th, Trump encouraged his supporters to watch the polls and called on the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. Comments some anti-government groups heard as calls to action. As many continue to believe that the 2020 presidential election was stolen and the Biden presidency is illegitimate, the movement is expected to continue engaging in efforts to sow distrust in our democratic systems. There's a link to the full piece, but yeah, let's read. We'll go ahead and take a look at these here. The Year in Hate and Extremism 2020, how right-wing extremists tried to undermine our democracy in 2020. In the days following the election, concerns around ballot counting, calls to, quote, stop the count, and claims of a, quote, stolen election started spreading throughout all segments of the anti-government movement. Anti-government groups targeted governors and local public health officials by objecting to coronavirus restrictions and were critical of state and local election officials. A new strain of anti-government ideology also emerged in 2020 with the Boogaloo movement. The self-identified Boogaloo Boys consist mostly of young, white men who unify around the issue of unrestrained gun rights. They oppose any and all firearm regulations. Oh, there you go, fam. Short, but there's a full piece, and those graphics kind of give you a basic idea of what the piece is going to cover. I'm not going to play it. This was funny. It was somebody managed to hack a city council meeting of some kind with a hammer and sickle and the words "Eat the Rich." It was pretty glorious. Yep, that's there it is. There's the image. Oh my goodness, it was incredible. Let's see if I can get another album over here with a little background music. I think we're closing out. We're getting towards the end of the last 24 hours of posts. Put on a little music and we'll scroll through the rest of it. And then I'll queue up some art for us to look at, some more punk rock records, and we'll go through the disgusting fucking platforming of fascists by our Congress, and the demonization of those who stand against it, namely Antifa or anti-fascists. But yeah, we're going to cover that. This is cool. First of all, those shirts are dope. This is from Donut Workers United. On February 20, 2021, at noon, the Donut Workers United, DWU, delivered an ultimatum to Voodoo Donuts. Corporate has 5 days to voluntarily recognize the union as workers are able to demonstrate overwhelming union support, or workers at the Old Town location will file for an election with the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB. Formal recognition, either through voluntary recognition or a successful election, would force Voodoo Donuts to enter into negotiations with its workers. The election would only be for workers at the Old Town location. The union hopes to have it as soon as possible, though rulings under the Trump NLRB have significantly slowed the process. A yes vote would mean that the DWU joins a growing movement of food service workers here in Portland and nationally who are fighting for the rights of frontline workers during COVID. The vote is so that workers ourselves have a legally binding seat at the table to negotiate over our essential work in a dysfunctional downtown that constantly forgets that it's workers who make this neighborhood run, says Lupe Miller, a worker at the Old Town store and staunch union supporter. Everyone wants to write downtown's obituary. I want workers who love and care for each other to write its next chapter instead. There we go. Samantha Bryce, an employee, union leader, trans rights activist, and proud mother, voiced to the company with coworkers, quote, "We don't want a drawn-out, contentious fight. This isn't remotely personal. We love many of the management staff. Don't squander resources on union-busting employee relation firms and law firms. From the bottom of our hearts, work with us. There's no shame in being union strong, union proud, and our donuts made union made." There you go, fam. Donut Workers United. What's this? This is from the Junior Collective. Okay, this is the same people that, if you saw, there's video on our channel from, us covering Unicorn Riot's coverage of their actions on Line 3. So this is, like I said, but this is directly from the Junior Collective page. A message from Rose, who took significant personal risks for the land and water. Selfless, beautiful resistance. After police arrested her for protecting the sacred, Atkin County told her jail support she would not be arraigned until Friday and held an extra night, but then released her today on a $4,000 bond. So that was updated. Please call Attorney General Keith Ellison. Let him hear how water protectors are treated by Atkin County and Hubbard County. $4,000 to $6,000 bonds, unnecessarily long jail holds, unlawful arrests on public land, strip searches, wire cages, all for trying to protect the earth from harm. There you go, fam. And there's the numbers that you can call if you want to do that phone zap action. But let's listen to this.
Hello. Here I am up in this beautiful contraption made of trees that really wonderful people made very safe for me. Right now it is just me and the police. I've got some friends over there keeping an eye on me too. It is such a beautiful day here in the Savannah State Forest. The sun's coming up. It's cold, but not too bad. I would like to show you the sun. Let's see, technology. Ugh, I'll just have to turn it. It's a very good day to defend the land, defend the sacred. It feels very powerful to be up here. Also scary. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Love y'all.
Yeah, there you go, fam, from the Junior Collective. Bonfire Collective, which we covered earlier. All right, and this is into the previous day, but yeah, let's check this out. This is from Redfish. An amazing image. The caption reads, "From Barcelona with love. Seen at the protest against the arrest of communist Catalan rapper Pablo Hasél, free Hasél, hashtag free Hasél, who has been sentenced to 9 months in prison for his music and activism, quote, against the Spanish crown and the state." Yeah, he said pro-communist stuff. He said stuff in support of militant Basque separatists. He compared some Spanish judges to the Nazis. And yeah, he's going to do 9 months in prison for writing poems and rapping about that kind of shit. It's disgusting. Solidarity with Pablo Hasél. What a beautiful image. Go ahead and we're going to first of all, that's 24 hours worth of posts from the Punks for Progress Facebook main page. News from the Revolutionary Struggle, fam. Much love, thanks, and appreciation to everyone that shared content there that made that coverage possible. But we're gonna come back over here. I'll let some more of this piece play out. Again, this was Michelle Kohler art. And after that, I'll play a few records, and then we will take a look at the House Committee hearing on the rise of domestic terrorism. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and turn this down. And I have the Cure, one more Cure track queued up.
Made
There's another art video that's queuing up, fam. It's called Pencil Drawing Time Lapse Solitude by Jono Dry. Insomniac's 10-inch, and I'm going to play two songs off this. This song's called Out of Her Mind, and the second track is I've Been Around. Track from the Insomniacs, fam. Estrus Records, 10-inch vinyl even. How's that for timing, fam? So, like I said, we're going to cover this goddamn disgusting House committee hearing on the rise of domestic terrorism. But before we do, we should probably take a look at a little proper context for the lying, disgusting piece of shit fascist grifter who embeds himself with far right-wing white supremacist terrorists and thugs by the name of Andy No. This is a piece, this is coverage from some time back from Some More News, but it's recently he re-upped it to Some More News, Some More News Clips is the name of the channel. And it's just, as you can see, about 5 minutes of relevant and important information to exactly who Andy No is. And I think we should take a look at it before we do any type of coverage of the Senate committee hearing. So, with no further whatever, this is Cody, Some More News, and his coverage of Andy No.
We haven't even talked about the mountains of misinformation and propagandists that were able to lull America into ignoring major extremist groups in the country, and how a lot of these grifter sites like OANN and the Daily Caller and Fox News are literally designed to queef past FCC rules and propaganda laws. And maybe we should fix those laws? But even with the laws we have now, there should definitely be investigations into people like Andy No for spending his entire career doing PR for the Proud Boys, a group Canada just labeled terrorists. If you know Andy, then you know that he's been using selective editing and photography to spin Antifa clashes with white supremacists as acts of unprompted leftist violence. Like the time he posted a video of Antifa attacking, quote, people on a bus with a hammer, without mentioning that the innocent bus victims were actually a white supremacist group who, as seen in previous photos, actually had the hammer to begin with. And when I showed him another angle and asked him where the hammer came from, he blocked me. Hi, Andy. How's that British accent that's fake going for you? Anyway,
Yeah, fake as fuck. And I just want to point out that what happened was people shouted things at these people on the bus, and they came out after taunting them and inviting them to violence, came out with a hammer to fucking hit somebody. The anti-fascists took the hammer from them, and then instantly photos were taken, and it went viral and hit across all kinds of media platforms saying that, look at the violent Antifa with the hammer and whatever. When in fact it was something that they had taken to defend them, to stop themselves from being beat with it. Anyway, and it was so humiliating. Like, they painted themselves as such victims when really they were just totally incompetent fucking violent terrorist fascist thugs that were going to beat someone with a hammer but weren't fucking capable of holding on to it. So they decided to twist it and turn it into a lie to demonize their detractors and those that they attempted to violently assault as somehow the initiators of that assault. It was disgusting and typical of fascist fucking methodology and typical of the types of people that Andy No associates with and platforms.
Someone threw a milkshake at him, and he claimed it gave him a brain hemorrhage and then refused to show his medical records, and then set up a GoFundMe and made almost $200,000. Because he's a hack grifter, you see. Oh, also, he once helped make a list of journalists with, quote, Antifa ideologies. It was actually just journalists who followed Antifa accounts, and then that list was used by white supremacists and accelerationist terrorists as a list of people to try to hurt and kill. Oh, also, there's footage of him hanging out with right-wing militias as they planned an assault, so yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Huh. Yes. What's that?
We were just checking which way the wind was blowing so we don't spray ourselves.
Yeah, that would suck.
There's 100 of them there? I'll take the first 3.
Let's go get a beer and say fuck it.
Huh?
Okay.
I know a lot about fighting. How many are there?
If we waltz up in
Yes,
there,
they're all sitting there drinking and waiting. How many are there?
They know we're coming because you put it on Facebook.
Oh, they
Okay.
So we stroll by there. Are they coming out?
No, but they saw me and they know I'm telling. So
Let's just walk by there.
No,
thing is, he's saying there's like a 50 or 100 guys out in the parking lot.
It's not.
I don't think we're going to be able to get
There's a
inside.
bunch of people with no jobs. They don't care about going
walking
there.
around. Walk. I'm down for that.
You see him in there? Just smiling and waiting to film, but not actually filming, as members of Patriot Prayer stood around and planned a May Day attack on a local restaurant that they suspected contained Antifa members dining. You can hear them literally talking about spraying people with gas. The resulting attack would leave one woman unconscious. This was led by Patriot Prayer big shot Joey Gibson, who would go on to storm the Oregon Capitol in January with other members, one of which now charged with assaulting police officers because they are a terrorist group. People literally planning violent attacks on businesses and government buildings, and just people dining, while Andy Ngo quietly followed along like their personal PR photographer. And while there's like countless articles breaking down the many lies he's made, or the many false claims he's retweeted, for some reason, this motherfucker just published a book of more lies and typos and testified before Congress.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Hirono, and members of the committee. Antifa is not a myth.
While wearing his best fake British accent, too. It's fake. The accent is fake. Totally. He's a fraud. It's a fake accent. Totally. This pathological liar and weirdo was invited by Ted Cruz, another weirdo and liar, to talk about the Antifa menace back in August, roughly 6 months before the U.S. Capitol was violently attacked by, not Antifa. In fact, they were so not Antifa that they were actually the people Antifa opposes, also known as the, FA. Jeez, it's almost like this whole time, there was an uptick in white supremacist extremist violence, and instead of addressing it, politicians focused on the counter-protesters to those groups. And a lot of people, like Andy Ngo, spent their careers aiding those extremists by unfairly labeling Antifa as the real problem. And maybe we now need to recognize that and never, ever, 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 ever listen to the grifters who tried to tell us that right-wing violence wasn't an issue, and investigate whether or not they knew at the time they were lying about the threat of Antifa being somehow worse than all the Nazi militias brewing in this country, and dig into their associations with these terrorists. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.
Oh, Cody.
I would like to remind members that we have established an email address and distribution lists to circulate exhibits, motions, or other written materials that members may want to offer as part of our hearing. If you would like to submit materials, please send them to the email address that has been previously distributed to your offices, and we will circulate the materials to members and staff as quickly as possible. I would also ask all members, both those in person and those attending remotely, to mute your microphones when you are not speaking. This will help prevent feedback and other technical issues. You may unmute yourself anytime you seek recognition. I would also remind all members that guidance from the Office of Attending Physician calls for all members to wear masks even when they are speaking. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement and emphasize the importance of this day. Over the course of the last 4 years, every corner of the United States has felt the impact of rise of domestic terrorism. Communities of faith, peaceful protesters, and even the United States Congress itself have been attacked by domestic terrorists. The executive branch has an array of statutory authorities to prevent attacks and bring charges against domestic terrorists, including those that are white supremacists. It is abundantly clear, however, that despite pleas from Congress and the American people, these tools have not been fully utilized nor implemented effectively and with the full force of law and all the available resources. We must focus on our federal government on the goal of eradicating those homegrown threats in communities across the country. Domestic terrorists pose a clear and deadly threat to the well-being of all Americans. During the past 2 years, this committee has examined the federal response to domestic terrorists each time a horrific and tragic white supremacist attack has taken place. As just one sober example, in August of 2019, the shooting spree at a Walmart in El Paso, the home of our colleague, the Honorable Veronica Escobar, left 22 people dead and 24 more wounded, marking the third deadliest act of violence by domestic extremists in more than 50 years. It is certainly troubling that the core of his hatred was based on language and ethnicity. It is so troubling that there have been so many shocking tragedies in recent years, from the deadly rampage at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue, religion and immigration issues, to the 2012 white supremacist attack on the Sikh temple in Milwaukee. So sad that I have been on this committee through all of these horrific attacks, and to the brutal murder of 9 worshipers at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. Even our most hallowed houses of worship have become targets of violent and hateful domestic terrorists. The funeral for these precious souls was a powerful statement that we would not tolerate that violence. It was taken to another level when President Barack Obama sang the song, Amazing Grace. For all of those who want to equivocate about the nature of this threat or make false comparison, take a moment to pause and reflect on that statistic. Over the last 10 years, 75% of all murders resulting from domestic terrorism have been the result of right-wing extremists. Attempts to equate white supremacy to anarchists, activists, and other groups who are opposed to white nationalism and other domestic terror ring as hollow today as they did following the alt-right protests in Charlottesville, Virginia. No, there are not good people on both sides. On January 6th, former President Trump directed a group of his followers, which included an array of hate-filled extremists, to attack the Capitol and Congress at a time when we were fulfilling our sacred constitutional duty in certifying electors. Our citizens have repeatedly seen and have been horrified by the images from that day, including police officers being beaten and bloodied, beatings which caused the death and serious lasting injuries. There are no both sides in this debate. We must not be misled by efforts to divert the attention and accountability for these acts of right-wing violence and terror. Any attempt to do so, for instance, says that the real problem is something called Antifa, is irresponsible and belittles the seriousness of the threat of extreme right-wing violence and misidentifies who the perpetrators predominantly are in this community. As the FBI director said unequivocally, white supremacists are the most lethal threat for domestic violence in our country. Among domestic terrorists, white supremacy has no equivalent. I ask all the members of the subcommittee to join me today in denouncing domestic terrorism, including white supremacy, in all forms. I wish we would just take an oath or raise our hands. With this hearing today, the subcommittee comes together again to seek answers to why our federal government has not taken the steps necessary to address the rising specter of right-wing and white nationalist domestic terrorism. At the beginning of the last Congress, the Judiciary Committee held a hearing entitled Hate Crimes and the Rise of White Nationalism. During that hearing, we heard from a diverse panel of witnesses who described both the rise of white nationalism and the shortcomings in the current enforcement regime. What was clear then, and is clear now, is that our current approach is not working. Enough is enough. It is time for the action, and I look forward to hearing from today's panelists on what federal law enforcement must do to swiftly address the rise of domestic terrorism and how Congress can help. I believe that there are well-reasoned and measured steps that we can take, such as passing Representative Brad Snyder's Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act that would focus the federal government's resources on the continuing threats to terrorize and kill Americans. With domestic terrorism, our country has suffered horrendous and repeated attacks on our people and our democracy, attacks not from beyond our borders, but from within. And as well, we saw on January 6th, those attacks have been on those innocent law enforcement officers standing in the gap to protect the citadel of democracy. The wounds are deep, but our resolve is strong. We must not allow this to continue. And as we examine this very important time in our history, we must recognize the importance, the very importance of the work that we have to do. The nature of the domestic terrorist threats against our country must be examined, and let us do so today. As we proceed today, I'd like to offer the words of Abraham Lincoln. The world will little note, nor longer remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. The brave men, living and dead, have consecrated it far beyond our poor power to add or detract. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so nobly advanced. In this committee, I hope that we will finish this noble work and that we will not succumb to this kind of violence in America ever again. I yield back at this time. It's now my pleasure to recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure for me to serve on this subcommittee on crime, terrorism, and homeland security. And as this is the first hearing, my first hearing as ranking member of this esteemed subcommittee, I want to start out by saying how much I look forward to working with you to combat violent crime, keep our communities safe, and stand by the men and women of law enforcement. Now, when you and I spoke before, I told you I did not intend to show a video, but something in your comments, I think, causes me to want to change my mind. I'll show you in a second. Turning our attention to today's hearing on the rise of domestic terrorism in America, we must approach the subject with open minds and open eyes. We must acknowledge that all domestic terrorism is wrong and must not only be acknowledged, but condemned. This includes domestic terrorism labeled as right-wing or left-wing. I fear that my colleagues on the other side
I heard that right-wing, left-wing equivocation bullshit. There is no left-wing equivalent to what we've seen from right-wing white supremacist terrorists. There is no left-wing equivalent to it. There just isn't. There is none.
focus on right-wing domestic terrorism, and I hope that I am mistaken. However, I suppose that they would first need to admit that left-wing domestic terrorism exists. And just last year, for instance, the chairman of the whole Judiciary Committee called Antifa imaginary. I suppose our witness today, Mr. No, was beaten and continually threatened by adherents to an imaginary group.
This is just, oh my God. I'm gonna have to gather my breath and my thoughts, because this is a fucking ranking member of a Senate committee parroting the lies that Andy No has been threatened. Andy No has been insulted in many extreme ways. And there's a lot of people who deeply despise Andy No and let him know that. That's because Andy No made like kill lists and shit. He made lists of people that he labeled, in most cases spuriously and incorrectly, as being Antifa. And those people on that list were targeted for violence and terrorism and harassment. And to paint him as some type of victim of threats and whatever, people got fucking seriously hospitalized and may have even been killed because of fucking Andy No and his lies, man. And the worst that's ever happened to that piece of shit was he got punched one day and he also got a fucking milkshake to the face. Don't fall for this bullshit, fam. This Mr. Biggs from fucking Arizona. And if some random politician said that Antifa is imaginary, that's stupid framing, and there is no connection between anti-fascists and anyone in government at all whatsoever. The capitalist imperialist mechanisms that control this government despise anti-fascists because we're anti-capitalist. And maybe, I'm sure I'll have plenty more to say, but as you can, so look, you can see that this is 3.5 hours. We're not going to watch 3.5 hours. There's two very, very long breaks that happen in this. And I've also got it at 1.25 speed, so it's playing a little fast. They're doing their little introduction stuff, and then they're going to get into, I believe it's 3 different guests. I haven't watched the whole thing. I've only skimmed it a little bit. But I just wanted to let you know, no, we're not about to go 3.5 hours of coverage on this. But keep in mind that there is just no proof. And again, there is no equivalency between white supremacist fucking terrorism and any type of supposed left-wing terrorism. Like, right-wing fucking white supremacists have been murdering people and doing mass shootings and committing violence on the street for years. And then leftists go out on the street and peacefully march and get attacked by pigs, and then it gets labeled a riot, and then the nightly news, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, it doesn't matter, will portray it as a left-wing rioting and that kind of shit, and they do that perpetually, especially throughout the George Floyd uprisings, so that far-right people think that there's some type of connection or equivalent between the George Floyd uprisings and the blatant, overt, like, sending pipe bombs to multiple people, shooting up fucking mosques and synagogues, and mass fucking violence that was committed on the Capitol and around the nation that same day. They want to act like that's somehow the same thing as when leftists are attacked by cops and labeled as rioters. Okay, and Andy Ngo swims all up in that soup. If you can believe that the imaginary fucking ongoing leftist violence and terrorism, and again, let me specify and make very, very abundantly clear that any type of activity that you've seen from the left over the last few years, and especially during the Floyd uprisings, worst case scenario, you saw property damage, which is not violence. The right wing goes out for the purpose of marching so that they can fight the Antifas or they can attack BLM activists that they've been trained to believe are violent rioters, right? Even though they're not, again, and they've just been marching peacefully and then had cops attack them. And this is nothing even remotely new. This stretches all the way back to Martin Luther King and the times of Black Power, when civil rights activists would take to the street and peacefully march, not commit any type of property damage. There wasn't the looting and that kind of shit that you may have seen examples of later. In the civil rights movement, they came out and they marched peacefully and locked arm and sang "We shall overcome," and had fire hoses unloaded on them, had dogs unleashed on them, and in many cases were shot. And then they would show that on the nightly news that night, the response to their peaceful march, the fire hoses, the dogs, and the shooting, and go, look what we had to do. The rioting, they didn't say the blacks. They said N-words, and Negro was a word they used a lot back then on the news. But this was all, John Birch Society and Klan propaganda that holds true to this day. It's still referenced to this day as like the riots in Harlem or the riots that happened in the response from law enforcement to riots during the civil rights movement, when I would say 99%, if not 100% of those were completely nonviolent, devoid of property damage, and only had violence unleashed on them by the pigs and the mechanisms of the state, which is ruled by the capitalist imperialist ruling class. And this is nothing new today. Okay, fam? Nothing new. And like I said, Andy Ngo is swimming in the soup of that. If you buy into the lie that there's been rioting in the streets from BLM and Antifa, then it's easy for you to believe that Andy Ngo, who made $200,000 because he lied about the effects of a milkshake to his face. He said he had fucking brain bleed, fam, because of a milkshake to the face. And he got $200,000 out of that. $200,000 off that one grift. And that's because people are willing to believe that he's some type of victim of the violence they've been lied to and made to believe exists on the left. And then this motherfucker right here, this fucking Biggs piece of shit, wants to make correlations between the imaginary leftist terrorism and the very, very real and verifiable violent terrorism and murder coming out of the far right white supremacist fucking thuggery on the street, as backed by many people in the capitalist ruling classes. All right, I'm going to go back to it.
Antifa laid siege to some of our cities much of last year, and I hope that we can have a thoughtful and balanced discussion about the issue of domestic terrorism. And I remain hopeful that, despite the fact that one of our witnesses here today suggested that ISIS bomb a Trump property in Turkey, I cannot decide which is worse, that a retired naval non-commissioned officer made such a suggestion on Twitter, or that it was thought appropriate to invite him here today to discuss domestic terrorism. Ideologies that fuel domestic terrorism exist all along the political spectrum. And in 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia, during a Unite the Right rally, James Alex Fields drove his car into counter-protesters, killing Heather Heyer and injuring 28 others.
Right.
That
And where's
was
the
evil
example? And where's the example of that? Where's the comparable example of that from the left? Where is the person on the left that drove over a bunch of people with their car? Zero. Doesn't happen. Doesn't exist. Leftists get run over by right-wingers in fucking cars. That's a thing. But there is no fucking example of that you can compare to on the left. It does not exist. That's not to say that Antifa is imaginary. But he gives the example of Alex Fields and says, we got to take real off of, basically talking about the Floyd uprisings. I don't know that he came out directly said that, but Antifa over the last year. He's talking about the Floyd uprisings. No one in the Floyd uprisings drove over anyone with their cars or murdered anyone. They got murdered by a piece of shit kid named Kyle Rittenhouse, a couple of them. And the talking point on that, fam, is that to this day, you'll see in the right-wing threads when they defend Kyle Rittenhouse that he was defending people from destroying the city. No one was destroying anything at the time. People were marching peacefully for Black lives. And Kyle Rittenhouse shot one of them in the back of the head. And they managed to shoot another person dead. And then another person in the arm when they tried to stop him from his killing rampage. But to this day, they talk about destroying the cities. Not one city has been destroyed, fam. Not one. Not one. Anytime you hear any right-winger talk about they destroyed cities, you need to keep in mind what city was literally destroyed and set on fire. There were some instances in a maybe 1, at the most 2 block radius that saw some type of property damage, and we even saw, the cop shop in Minneapolis was burnt down. And by the way, only one person has been charged that I know of in relation to the cop shop being burnt down in Minneapolis, and it was a fucking boogaloo boy who was trying to kick off a second civil war and blame it on BLM and Antifa. So this guy's trying to act like that piece of shit, Alex Fields, who was directly connected to American Guard, which is now Patriot Front. When that murdering piece of shit did what he did, that there's somehow something or some type of activity on the left to compare that to. There is not. There is not. And any right-winger that might be watching this right now, what's the example? What's the example of us taking a car and running over a bunch of patriots? Doesn't exist, and we wouldn't do it. Fuck this Biggs motherfucking lying propagandist, fucking high-paid shill piece of shit.
Acceptable. And comments made today and other times since that point need to be put into perspective. And with that, let's go with the video if we may, Madam Chair.
Well, they got video? What's this?
This is the...
I can't even remember actually who... Oh, this is Reuters, fam. Their videos. There you go.
Madam Chair, I would ask that.
Yeah, all that echo is coming from Reuters, actually. Let's let them get their audio figured out.
They have their computers on mute that should allow for it to proceed without feedback.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please proceed with the video.
Excuse me, Mr. Protest. Excuse me, they don't let themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. No, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington?
No.
What about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking
No, we're
about
not.
the
No one's
neo-Nazis
changing
and the
culture.
white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
No, you didn't.
And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly.
No, they didn't.
In the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers.
No, you didn't.
See them come with the black outfits.
So what?
And with the helmets and with
So
the
what?
baseball bats.
No, they didn't.
You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
No, you didn't.
So the point is, the previous president, the former President Trump, called out neo-Nazis and white nationalists and said they should be condemned. I think there's no one in this room that would
did he
disagree
now?
with that statement.
He gathers from that. That Donald Trump called out neo-Nazis. As he makes up a bunch of lies and demonize fucking leftists, makes them out to be thugs. People that were there, I want to redraw your attention or your memory to Cornel West saying that had it not been for anti-fascists and anarchists, he would have been squashed like a cockroach. The people that Donald Trump demonized as being thugs with bats and black clothes and masks were there to defend black and brown people from the white supremacist, white nationalist, terrorist fucking thugs that came there to wreak havoc and fucking violence on human beings. That was their purpose. They marched earlier that night, the night before, saying blood and soil and the Jews will not replace us. And then the next day they came with all their shields and their helmets and all their weapons and their guns to fucking do violence to their political fucking enemies. And one of them took it to the extreme and ran over a whole bunch of people. And then Trump makes a big long speech talking about how leftists were fucking violent and fucking whatever. And then this piece of shit takes that as, look, he discounted white supremacists. White supremacists always do that. Oh, yeah. The people who did that murder thing and got caught. Yeah, I denounce that. That's horrible. But the commies, man, the Black Lives Matter, national, extremists, man. What about them? They'll denounce the individual that does the violent terrorist act on the right. They'll even say, yeah, screw white supremacy. I denounce white supremacy. As though, and the reason they'll say that, I denounce white supremacy, is because they're ultimately, what they're saying is, white supremacy is only defined by hardcore Klan members and like neo-Nazi boneheads, right? It ignores the reality of systemic white supremacy in Western culture and in capitalist imperialism, Western capitalist imperialism. Astounding to me, fam. That this motherfucker takes from what Trump said as the takeaway from that is like he made some type of deep-throated denunciation of white supremacy, when in actuality what he did is gave full-throated fucking advocations and reutterances of far-right white supremacist talking points. You can say, oh, I denounce white supremacy, and then go do white supremacist stuff. And they're very keen to always do that so that they can say, oh, see, I denounced it.
That same year, we saw politically inspired domestic terrorism that actually hit much closer to our home. As Republican members gathered at Eugene Simpson Stadium Park in Alexandria, Virginia to practice for an annual congressional baseball game for charity, James Thompson Hodgkinson's, age 66, fired at least 70 rounds from a handgun and rifle at the congressman, staff, and others at the park. 5 people were injured during the assault, including Republican Whip Steve Scalise, who was in critical condition and underwent multiple surgeries.
Again, and they always bring this guy up. And then they say he was a Bernie supporter. Like, he didn't work for the Bernie campaign. He wasn't a fucking volunteer for Bernie. He's just a dude who shared some stuff in support of Bernie, who went out and did this really awful fucking thing. He didn't organize with any leftist groups. He didn't have direct connections with any type of leftist groups whatsoever. But he went and he shot a Republican. And this is forever and ever their example of the leftist fucking extremism and terrorism. when even if we are gonna, for the sake of some fucking twisted argument, take ownership of this piece of shit, which I'm never going to do ever, because it would be inaccurate to do so. But even if that was somehow directly connected to the left, it's one example. It literally happened years ago now, and since that time there have been numerous accounts of multiple fucking mass murders, bombings, and fucking street thug violence on the street, right? I said street twice. But again, so not even fucking comparable. Jesus, we're only 14 minutes into this, and it's 3.5 hours. I doubt we'll go through even the whole thing, even at fast pace, but pretty sure he's about to get to where he's going to introduce some of the guests. Maybe we'll go through get to the first break, maybe, and we'll see where we're at on time.
The Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Alexandria, a Democrat, concluded, quote, "The evidence in this case establishes beyond a reasonable doubt that the suspect, fueled by rage against Republican legislators, decided to commit an act of terrorism," close quote. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter. We also cannot forget the attack that took place in 2012 at the Family
Okay, so
Research Council.
if you're totally opposed to right wingers, you're most likely going to be in support of some liberal or maybe some left of center fucking progressive like Bernie. But even by his own words, this fucking asshole fascist propagandist piece of shit Biggs, even by his own description, the guy was motivated by his hate of right-wing politicians, not his support for Bernie Sanders. That was an afterthought. Oh, this guy who fucking hated these right-wing scumbags also happened to like Bernie. So, I bet he liked chocolate, and I bet he also liked sandwiches, and I bet he liked sunsets too. Does that make them fucking relevant to why he shot those people? No, it doesn't. And I'm going to say this right now. Any fucking leftist that's even like hinting at the notion of possibly going out and shooting a politician, do not fucking do it. It will backfire. They will create all kinds of legislation that will demonize and incarcerate and fucking destroy the lives of the leftists you hope to fucking defend with that act. Do not ever go out and shoot a politician in the name of leftism. Please. Not because that's the right thing to say to keep me from getting blocked on YouTube, but because I do not advocate it. And no leftist, communist, or anarchist I know advocates for it, because we know, one, it will not achieve our goals. It will not end capitalism and get us anywhere closer to it. In fact, it'll, two, totally create the fucking elements necessary for the mechanisms of power to stomp down on us even harder. As you will see with the police state sort of responses to what happened in the Capitol. Not that I advocate for what happened in the Capitol or in any way in solidarity with what happened in the Capitol. These fucking idiots. They prove my point, though, these fucking fascist assholes. Their attack and their push on the Capitol is going to justify laws, draconian laws that oppress all of us. We do not do violence as a tactic on the left. It's a bullshit fucking talking point from those that do violence as a political tactic, or at the very least people like this piece of shit who get paid to make apologies for those who do violence as political tactic.
Quote, kill as many people as he could, close quote, at the Family Research Council Center in Washington, D.C. According to the sentencing memorandum, he told the FBI he wanted to kill the people in the building and then smear a Chick-fil-A sandwich on their face. He was inspired to attack the FRC because it had been identified on Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map. It was a different set of ideologies that inspired the attacks on West Coast federal buildings than those that inspired an attack on our Capitol. We've seen white and black supremacist groups inspire domestic.
You see that? And I got to stop it there. Fam. This is him buying into the right-wing fucking demonization of the Southern Poverty Law Center as being the real hate group. Like, I'm sorry, Southern Poverty Law Center recognizing bigotry and racist hate and shining a light on it is not somehow something that is an advocation for or an inspiration for someone to go out and commit terrorism. So he's trying to link what this one person did which is completely separate from any of the fucking tactical goals of any leftist, and definitely separate from any type of anything advocated by the Southern Poverty Law Center. But he's trying to connect it to the Southern Poverty Law Center, whose sole purpose is to call out bigotry and hatred and extremist violence, right? Whether you agree with all of their framing and stuff, like they've had some troublesome framing of black nationalists over the years. But that said, there is no way that the Southern Poverty Law Center should be in any way even brought up in context of what this fucking piece of shit did in this shooting. It's disgusting, fam. It's disgusting that this is going on as some type of fucking, you know, example of facts and reality. This is all supposed to be about fucking how the rise, House Committee hearing on the rise of domestic terrorism. The only domestic terrorism in this country that exists with any type of fucking demonstrable significance is right-wing extremism, is white supremacist terrorist violence. And this motherfucker's trying to act like otherwise. That the people that are the victims of that right-wing supremacist terrorist violence are somehow comparable and in the same boat as those that did the violence. It's foul.
2015 in Charleston, South Carolina, Dylan Ruth, harboring views of white supremacy, took the lives of 9 congregants of the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. In 2019 in Jersey City, New Jersey, David N. Anderson and Francine Graham shot and killed 3 people at a kosher grocery store in Jersey City, New Jersey. The shooters also wounded 1 customer and 2 police officers. The Jersey City Police Department detective was shot and killed by the assailants at a nearby cemetery just before the grocery store attack. David Anderson and Francine Graham, identified as black Hebrew Israelites, which the Southern Poverty Law Center found that, quote, the extremist fringe of the Hebrew Israelite movement is black supremacist. It also wrote that the members of those groups, quote, believe that Jews are devilish imposters and openly condemn whites as evil.
You know, I'm not even going to let him talk. You know, if you want, we have video and context about the black Hebrew Israelites, but the person that did that act had associations with black Hebrew Israelites, but was not affiliated with them at the time. Again, it was a one-off thing that no leftist group wants anything to do with, because his tactics were totally contrary to any type of fucking leftist tactics or goals. And not that black Hebrew Israelites are leftists. They're very fundamentalist and religiously driven, and they are in many ways bigoted. But they're also colonized people. And just because that one guy had at one time been connected to them is an unfair comparison. Again, the only thing that's consistently violent that we can count on to do murder and to do violent terrorism is far-right extremists. The 2 examples that he gave there were 2 one-off examples that literally do exist in a vacuum, each one individually. And then all the other examples he gave, which were numerous, were consistent point for point, unbroken chains of examples of right-wing terrorist murder and violence for the purpose of, gaining sort of political prominence or pushing people forward into, some type of second civil war, or to push some type of white supremacist fucking agenda, race war agenda. Let's go ahead. I've heard, this is supposed to be us covering what the fuck. I can't listen to any more of their introductions. The first person, she gave a pretty factual account of what this was all about. Biggs was a lying ass propagandist piece of shit who should be recognized as pushing fucking rhetoric that will ultimately cause people to do violence. He's a stochastic terrorist. And the people that listen to what he has to say and internalize it will go out and do will do violence to leftists and BLM activists.
Testimony. When the light turns red, it signals your 5 minutes have expired. Mr. Henderson, welcome. You may begin.
Hey, if you're watching this video...
And we'll go for about a half hour, fam.
Thank you. Chairperson Jackson Lee, full committee chairman Nadler, Chairperson Biggs, and full committee member Jordan, and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing today on the federal response to domestic terrorism. I'm Wade Henderson, interim president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a coalition of more than 200 national organizations working to build an America as good as its ideals. This hearing, in the wake of January 6th attack on the Capitol, is important. Last month's attack, fueled in part by white nationalism and anti-Semitism that has long thrived in our country, horrified us all. But for those of us who represent marginalized people, the violence did not surprise us because sadly it is not new. We are all too familiar with the ways in which white supremacy has long thrived in our country. We also know that for too long, the threat of white nationalist violence has been weaponized, not only by white supremacists, but also by laws and programs that target us rather than protect us. I'd like to offer 4 recommendations today. First, Congress must pass the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act without any poison pill amendments that would create a new charge and demand that federal agencies show how they are fighting white supremacist violence. Federal law enforcement already has statutes and investigative powers to combat violence fueled by white supremacy, including over 50 terrorism-related crimes and over a dozen other criminal laws. But it has lacked the will to use them, and the DTPA would help address this. Importantly, the bill would not create new domestic terrorism charges or sentence enhancements that would ultimately harm our communities. Our nation's long history of misusing its mechanisms, including the use of COINTELPRO against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the post-9/11 targeting of Arabs and Muslims, and the FBI's prioritization of black identity extremists, makes clear that new authority would be used to expand racial profiling, undermine due process, or target political opponents, all in the name of national security. Instead, we should use existing tools to combat white supremacy without enabling new abuses. Second, Congress must identify ways to address and dismantle white supremacy in law enforcement. We know most police officers report for duty every day, determined to honor their mission. But we also know that there are officers who have actively promoted white supremacist groups that incite or use violence. White supremacy infects so many of our institutions, but its impact on policing is especially devastating. It makes us all less safe, including the police. Congress must demand a full accounting of what is being done to address white supremacy in law enforcement. And the White Supremacy in Law Enforcement Information Act is a good first step. Congress and federal agencies must also identify ways to ensure that law enforcement officers who incite racist violence are no longer welcome. Third, Congress must pass legislation and appropriations to enhance the federal response to hate crimes. White nationalist violence and other hate crime terrorizes communities on a daily basis. We also know that we do not have the accurate data necessary to effectively address it. The Jabara-Hire No Hate Act improves data and community-centered responses. But more must be done, including mandatory reporting and implementation of the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Finally, Congress must pass H.R. 40 to study the efficacy of reparations for African Americans and create a U.S. Commission for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. For over 400 years, subjugation of black people was a major factor in American economic growth. Yet long after the end of slavery, black people are still deprived of the benefits of that growth. If we are to address white nationalist violence, we must confront our history, including disinvestment in black and brown communities, because it still remains with us. Congress must pass H.R. 40 and reckon and account for our history. Reparations are owed, transformation is required. Now is the time to create a shared vision for a country as good as its ideals, where all are valued. To do this, we must reckon with white supremacy that was present at our founding and persists to this day. Thank you for having me here today. I would be happy to take your questions.
Expired. Now we recognize Mr. Malcolm W. Nance for 5 minutes of testimony. Mr. Nance, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and all the members of this committee. 27 years ago, on April 19, 1995, I was a U.S. Navy Cryptologic Intelligence Chief Petty Officer aboard a Los Angeles-class submarine carrying out operations in the Eastern Hemisphere. I was sitting in the radio communication space monitoring a report from our higher headquarters. One item dominated the unclassified significant events. Truck bomb explodes in Oklahoma City, dozens killed. As a specialist in Middle East terror groups, I was convinced that one of our adversaries had infiltrated the American homeland and perpetrated a major act of violence. I was so sure that I bet an entire month's salary I quickly lost that bet. The terrorists that conceptualized, built, and delivered the 4,500-pound ammonium nitrate and fuel oil bomb at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was a decorated U.S. Army veteran named Timothy James McVeigh. He conspired with 2 others, including his platoon leader, Terry Nichols, to exact revenge against the government for the deaths of the Branch Davidian religious extremists in Waco, Texas. However, there was a larger ideological belief at play. McVeigh was a white supremacist who had self-radicalized. He came to believe that a race war was imminent in the United States. He used the 1978 fictional novel, The Turner Diaries, as a blueprint to ignite a civil war which would lead to a white domination of North America. The Turner Diaries, written by American neo-Nazi William Pierce, describes America as a dystopia, where Black and Hispanic crime runs rampant, 800,000 whites are mass arrested, and guns are confiscated. The fictional Errol Turner is a member of the terrorist group called The Order. In that book, a 5,000-pound truck bomb is detonated at the headquarters of the FBI in Washington, D.C., as the go sign for a war to overthrow the system. The system was represented, America was led by the Jews, the news media, Hollywood, and liberal government politicians. The Order carries out reprisal lynchings of liberal whites they call race traitors in, quote, The Day of the Rope. The book ends when the fictional hero dies in a kamikaze airplane bombing of the Pentagon. Then came real life. McVeigh copied the described bomb and just altered the target. Another white supremacist, Robert Matthews, a close associate of Pierce, formed a terror group of the same name in the 1980s to carry out robberies, assassination, bombings, and fund the network of white supremacist terror groups, terror training camps in the rural U.S. Matthews would later be killed in a shootout with the FBI. There was a long history of anti-government extremism in our nation. That mistrust is often based on myths, conspiracy theories, paranoia, laced with a healthy dose of rebellion nostalgia. Most domestic violent extremists seek to protect and defend rights, not as they are written in the Constitution, but as they wish they had been written. They live in an alternate information space which bends them out of objective reality. Major violent extremist subclasses include the Ku Klux Klan and white heritage groups, neo-Nazi and fascist international groups, Christian identity movement groups, anti-tax extremists, anti-government militia groups, anti-abortion extremists, anti-immigrant macro-nationalists, class of civilization groups, white ethnosafe accelerationist groups, conspiracy theory-driven DVEs, autocrat political cultist DVEs.
Do you hear that? Just real quick, fam. You hear that? Just numerous examples over a long period of time that show this as an unbroken tradition over time. And again, numerous examples of similar behaviors. Whereas the right winger that came before, he talked about one dude that fucking had some tacit support of Bernie Sanders who shot some politicians, and then some dude who at one time was affiliated with Black Hebrew Israelites, which is not a leftist group, who went and did some fucking violent fucking terrorist murderous act. That's it. That's the only examples they had to show that there's some type of comparable left-wing terrorism. Where this guy, in just like the last 30 seconds, rattled off like it seemed like a dozen examples of white supremacist terrorist violence and murder. Like there again, I know I sound like a broken record, but there's just no comparison between the two. And I want to point out, look, the right wing comes out and has come up with 2 things that are dubious at best, while each of these people that are like serious about really addressing fucking violent terrorism are giving you numerous factual verifiable examples of real terrorist violence. And it's all coming from far right factions and elements. All of it.
President Barack Obama would be a watershed moment that would start the consolidation of the disparate wings of the domestic violent extremist movements. But the 2016 election of President Donald Trump gave them a tribal chieftain they can all rally behind. Most right-wing extremists have poorly formed cells with limited capacity or knowledge of terrorist operations. However, many veterans of the military could lend in-depth operational planning and improvise explosive skills to any group. These groups may be amateur, but can demonstrate devastating capability if not detected in time. The former president's 2020 defeat has led to a completely new wave of DVE organization and preparedness that could potentially realize their most violent fever dream fantasies as patriotic resistance fighters straight from the movie Red Dawn. If they do not understand there is a national rejection of their behaviors, then they may feel compunction to act on that potential. We could see future attacks that make Oklahoma City bombing pale in comparison. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions, even the silly ones.
Fantastic. Ad. At least they put their ads in spots where it's like seems appropriate. If you're a content creator and you're putting ads in your shit, which, you know, I don't do that, but whatever, if you do, that's cool. Try to put it in, you know, proper scene changes. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I let that shit run when I should have just skipped it. Anyway, here we go.
It's expired. Members, there are 185 members who have not voted. I'm going to try and get through at least one more witness, because we can vote on at least 2 votes, and hopefully the 3rd vote, and we can come back and not have any further interruption. If there's a member that wants to leave for the floor now, please feel free. I'd like to continue now with Mr. No for his 5 minutes. Mr. No, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
This guy's a fucking scumbag, man.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jackson Lee, Ranking Member Biggs, and members of the committee. Being a journalist from Portland, Oregon,
no, you're not.
I know domestic terrorism well.
No, you don't.
Since
Yes, you do. Okay, I just got to start off like, this is going to be hard because I hate this fucking scumbag, man. But I just want to start off by saying, imagine going and sitting in front of Congress and testifying in front of Congress in a fake accent. Like, the dude is not from fucking England, man. He doesn't have a fucking British accent. And I will also say, I'm going to try to let him talk. He gets 5 minutes here, but the only domestic terrorism he knows is his good friends from the Proud Boys and fucking Boogaloos and shit. And terrorism he fucking facilitates. Piece of fucking dog shit.
I've witnessed how violent extremists from Antifa and others have made political violence on the streets of my home city, Banal. Local politicians turn a
See
blind
that?
eye
My
to
home city of Portland, but he's got a British accent. And that seems like a really petty thing to focus on, but I can't listen, man. Like, I'm Gen X, and like I grew up watching like PBS would show like Monty Python, and I used to watch the Young Ones a lot, and I used to walk around and talk in an English accent all the time to like quote Monty Python, and it was really fun. And guess what? A lot of my like punk and goth friends, we used to do that too. But and some of us were better at it than others and whatever, but I can't and the reason I bring that up is because I knew a couple people that did that, like in the goth community. A couple of different guys in different cities too. One in Reno, and I knew someone in Southern California who took on a fake, like took it to the extreme. Took that sitting around and telling Monty Python, reciting Monty Python lines with your fucking friends and stuff, or quoting the Young Ones, to kind of talking in that accent all the time. And it was annoying and stupid, but even those people, I can't imagine they would ever sit in front of fucking Congress with a fake accent, man. And this guy just admitted he's called it his hometown of Portland, so he is not born with a goddamn fucking British accent. And if he would come out and be that fucking surface level fake, that should tell you so much about what you need to know about this piece of shit lying grifter.
Because they believe the extremism was a justified response to the surprise election win of Donald Trump. Local fellow journalists did the same in downplaying Antifa's violent extremism. Today, I ask that you don't do the same.
I gotta address that. So he anti-fascists didn't come out and commit violence because Trump got elected. What happened was a bunch of emboldened right-wing fascist fucking street thugs like Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys and Identity Europa and Rise Above movement felt emboldened by the Trump administration, started taking to the street literally like almost every weekend across the country to commit violence and to violently push their fascist right-wing agenda onto different communities. They repeatedly attacked Berkeley for a year or more, for a couple years, in an attempt to get to create a stronghold in Berkeley of far-right fascism. And it didn't work. They got run out. And then they say, oh, the people that didn't allow us to commit violence unrestricted in your communities, they were just mad that Trump was elected. Has nothing to do with it. They came out, and listen, every time that these fascists did this shit, like in 2016 and 2017, they would march and rally in the streets, whether it was Portland or Boston or U.S. Capitol or in Berkeley or Oakland or San Francisco, whatever, wherever it was. And that night, all kinds of fucking violence would be done to trans people from the community, black women walking home late at night, businesses that had pro-BLM fucking signs in their fucking storefronts had their storefronts busted out. There would be a rampant fucking uptick of racially motivated property damage and violence against actual individuals from marginalized groups the night of these different rallies. So when anti-fascists came out in response in 2016 and 2017, it wasn't because they were mad about Trump being elected. That was the Woman's March in many ways. Okay, it wasn't just about that, but I know in 2016, that first Women's March was a big fucking fuck you to Donald Trump. But what anti-fascists were doing was not about, oh, we're mad because Donald Trump is president. It's, we're terrified because he's emboldening these fascists to come out in the street and do violence against our communities. And anti-fascists came out and said, you know what? I'm going to put my body between you and the indigenous person or the trans person or the Mexican brown woman or the Latinx person or the LGBTQ person that you want to do violence to. I'm going to put my body between you and them. And then they ran home and went, oh, the Antifas were violent. They didn't let us just randomly run fucking through the streets and beat people. Now, they had a lot of fucking cops helping them with that effort and doing violence to the leftists that came out to defend their communities from these fascist violence. The cops facilitated them repeatedly in numerous cities. But mad because Trump? Fuck this fake accent lying motherfucker, man.
From 2016 through 2019, Portland and the surrounding area suffered dozens of violent protests, mass street brawls, and riots that resulted in serious bodily injuries, arson attacks, and property destruction. By 2020, Antifa exploited...
You notice that the people that testified before him provided specific dates and locations and names of organizations and places. He just said there was looting, or what did he say? Arson and property damage and bodily harm. But he gives no specific examples.
Anger around the death of George Floyd and others to launch an unprecedented attempted insurrection in Portland. For more than 120 recurring days, Antifa carried out nightly riots targeting federal, county, and private property. They developed a...
Absolutely not true. They came out and peacefully marched in defense of black lives and had massive militarized fucking police force fucking directed at them and fucking unmarked fucking federal fucking... I don't even know what you call them, fucking snatch you up off the street squads. But he wants to label that as damaging private property and riots and shit. You watch any of those fucking accounts in PDX, and you watch the first moment any type of fucking violence happens, it's the cops doing it to people peacefully marching. This man is a lying, high-paid fascist grifter.
Apparatus that included streams of funding for accommodation, travel, riot gear, and weapons.
Streams of funding. See, again, what streams of funding? Give a specific example, Andy, no. What stream of fucking funding? This is an old trope, and it's a fucking lie that, leftists and anti-fascists, the vast majority of us are incredibly poor, and we have no fucking funding as anti-capitalists from any fucking billionaire capitalist. No billionaire wants to give us money so that we could take it and turn around and use it to end his ability to be a fucking billionaire. There were no covert fucking funding streams. But this motherfucker takes a milkshake to the face, lies about it, and gets $200,000 out here talking about funding streams. All leftist organizing and funding thereof is made public and well known. And there are no wealthy fucking donors kicking us down. None. It's all straight up true grassroots. And not one of us has pulled down $200,000 on one fucking action. Not one of us. Motherfucker funding streams. Everything that full-on fascist grifters like this accuse the left of, they're guilty of. Always. All of it. Everything they accuse us of, they're projecting. And this is not like, oh, because they're, like it's some weird knee-jerk thing they do. This is a very tactical fucking methodology where it's, where they're weakest, they attack us. They come out and accuse us of what they are most guilty in and where they're weakest on. So they demonize us and go, oh, you know, they have funding streams and it's all outside agitating, things that they're actually engaged in. So that when we turn back and go, no, you're the ones, it makes us look like we're going, you, and whatever, right? But literally, we have no fucking funding streams on the left. It's just not a thing, fam.
A murder, hundreds of arson attacks, mass injuries, and mass
in a murder. What murder?
To put that into context for those here today, similar actions that occurred at the Capitol Hill riot on the 6th of January 2021 were repeated every night, months on end in the Pacific Northwest.
That is absolutely demonstrably false. You cannot say that what happened in the Capitol on January 6th that happened even once, let alone every night in PDX. The people in PDX were not storming government buildings, trampling cops, and doing violence to cops. You will never see the video of anti-fascists full fucking swinging on cops in Portland. That is not a thing that happened. It happened in the Capitol. It happened in the Capitol. None of those PDX anti-fascists went at people and murdered people. They didn't chant USA as they trampled fucking government buildings. They took to the streets and had violence unleashed on them. Not even remotely the same fucking thing. That's why he gets paid big fucking bucks, though. And him going and testifying before Congress will make it easier to facilitate his grift.
Antifa and far-left extremists seized 6 blocks of city territory that they said was autonomous. It resulted in 6 shootings and 2 murders over a period of 3 weeks.
Note that he's not going to give you the specific, and I'm not going to go into it either, but each of those 6 things. Yes, there was violence that went down in Chas. But it wasn't a part of the mechanism, and it's not, you know, there's violence and murders and random fucking robbings, and a lot of that is what it was. It was shit that went down in that place because there was a lot of people in there, and it was like flawed human beings are going to be a part of everything, but it wasn't part of the project. It wasn't part of, you see what I'm saying? It wasn't a tactical thing where they just decided, okay, now that we've taken Chaz, we can go around and start shooting people. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And again, note that he doesn't provide any specific examples. He just throws out numbers and says things happened. Whereas the other people who testified gave very specific dates and names of groups and organizations and the dates on which they'd done things and their histories. He provides none of that context here.
In July 2020, then DHS Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli reported to Congress at a Senate hearing that at least 277 injuries have been inflicted on about 140 federal agents protecting the Mark O. Hatfield U.S. Courthouse in Portland. With my own eyes, I witnessed black-clad, masked militants setting fires to buildings occupied by people. The Antifa came on...
Bullshit. Where's the proof, Andy? You did not see that with your own eyes. But you have seen your fucking comrades plot violence against other people. But you don't have any video proof of all this shit you say you saw fucking, this illegal shit you saw leftists do, man. You don't have it. You're a lying motherfucker.
With homemade IEDs, guns, and
homemade
knives.
IEDs. Fuck you. Guns and knives.
Throwing projectiles like rocks, glass, and frozen water bottles. Some of them even brought electric power tools to cut apart the fencing that was set up to protect the courthouse. Andrew Faulkner,
you know that that's why they brought that, if they brought it.
Rioting charges, allegedly possessed pipe bomb components and a machete at the time of his arrest. The
Allegedly.
following month, a self-described Antifa member hunted down a Trump supporter in downtown, is shot and dead point blank before
That's
fleeing
bullshit.
out of state and being killed by federal authorities the following.
That's bullshit. He did not hunt anyone down, man. That dude was fucking walking in the other direction, and that Patriot Prayer motherfucker walked up on him, shot him with mace, after fucking macing and doing violence to people all fucking day, and that motherfucker in self-defense shot that Patriot Prayer piece of shit. And then fucking Trump sent out a literal fucking death squad and shot that dude, Reinhold, that anti-fascist fucking righteous as fuck comrade, cold-blooded, murdered him in the street. Fred Hampton him in the fucking street, man. Murdered him. He did not track down, stalk that Patriot Prayer motherfucker. It was the other way around. God, what a disgusting lying piece of shit this guy is.
Week. He left behind a trail of posts on his social media indicating his desire for an armed conflict with the state, which he viewed as fascist.
No, he did not. No, he did not. He called for fucking revolution. He never called for a fucking armed confrontation with the state. That's a fucking lie.
Important subject of domestic terrorism. But I'm concerned that our representatives are increasingly viewing this through a partisan lens. This puts all Americans at risk. Those speaking before and after.
And it's not partisan. It's not a partisan lens. Okay? It's not about Republican and Democrat. Every fucking member of the Republican Party is full on fucking given over to fascism now. Okay? But they're not necessarily the fascist street thug terrorists. There's groups that have, you know, interlocking relationships and whatever. But it's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's full-on fucking fascist right-wing terrorists, and what extremes and levels of extremism do they have, and how far are we willing to go to defend ourselves from them?
On far-right terrorism, a threat extremely well tracked by government agencies, non-profits, and journalists. Much less understood is the terrorism threat from the far left, particularly Antifa. Far-left terrorism isn't new in the U.S. It has a long history in the second half of the 20th century.
No, it does not.
Groups like the Weather Underground, the Black Liberation Army, and the...
Okay, Weather Underground and Black Liberation Army were not anti-fascist organizations. Every fucking anti-fascist I know, even though we might be a little enamored by some of the stuff that the audacity of the Weather Underground, we do understand that that's a tactic that does not work. And we will honestly and feverishly tell our comrades, if we even hear hints of them trying to suggest something that's even reminiscent of what the Weather Underground did, they will always be universally struck down by more adept and knowledgeable comrades. Not for rhetorical purposes, but again, because we know, one, it will not achieve the revolution, and two, it facilitates the mechanisms of power's ability to further foment or to further put in place laws that restrict us and subjugate and oppress already oppressed and marginalized people. Antifa, Black Liberation Army, and Weather Underground are all three completely different organizations. But he wants to tie anti-fascists to the Weather Underground because they actually did bombings. He just lied and said that Reinhold repeatedly used social media to call for an armed fucking confrontation, which is an absolute lie. He never did that. And then he invokes the Weather Underground and Black Liberation Army. Again, not groups have anything to do with anti-fascists, never carried the banner of Antifa.
A19 communist organization carried out bombings, robberies, and jailbreaks in the name of anti-racism. Antifa are continuing that legacy today and use the cloak.
No, we're not. We're doing bombings. What did he say? We're doing bombings, huh? We're carrying on that legacy. Is what he said. What did he say?
Prophets and journalists. Much less understood is the terrorism threat from the far left, particularly Antifa. Far-left terrorism isn't new in the US. It has a long history in the second half of the 20th century, where groups like the Weather Underground, the Black Liberation Army, and the May 19 Communist Organization carried out bombings, robberies, and jailbreaks in the name of anti-racism. Antifa are continuing that legacy today.
Jailbreaks.
Use a cloak of anti-fascism.
So us advocating for free 'em all is jailbreaks and robberies. Anti-fascists do not commit robberies, not one jailbreak, not one fucking robbery, and none of this shit that he says that this other group did against in the name of anti-racism. Again, I'm not familiar with the history of the Black Liberation Army, so I can't really speak to them, but I'm going to imagine that it wasn't, hey, let's go rob a bank because anti-racism. Hey, let's go do violence because we hate racism. I'm sure it was much more nuanced and different than that. And I'm sure, because Andy No is saying it's a lie, because what he's saying, the connections that he's making to other groups, I know to be a lie by firsthand account and knowledge. So I think it's fair to assume that his framing of the Black Liberation Army is false. Again, I don't know, because I haven't spent the time to really study them properly. But to say that Antifa is now carrying on a tradition of robberies and jailbreaks, it's bullshit. Just there's no robberies or jailbreaks. We're marching to advocate for the freeing of political prisoners and people incarcerated during COVID and not being provided the things that they need to survive during COVID in prisons and shit. But ain't nobody tried to break anybody out, man. This lying motherfucker.
Shield themselves from criticism and to fool well-meaning people into becoming allies. In September 2020, FBI Director Chris Wray told lawmakers that Antifa is real and that the FBI investigates the threat coming from violent anarchist extremists who identify with Antifa. We should heed his warnings. Domestic terrorism is not partisan. Both the far left and the far right seek to delegitimize and destabilize the republic. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Ah, Jesus Christ. Okay, so we just hit the 3-hour mark. You know, fascinating that this dude that is he is like the most prominent propagandist and voice box for far-right fascist terrorism. And they bring him in to come in and demonize leftists. Provide nothing factually verifiable. I mean, how many lies did we catch in that? Just blatant fucking lies, starting with his accent. It's absolutely, utterly, and completely fucking disgusting. And anyway, I can't watch any more of it anymore. We've been streaming for 3 hours now. I will play a track to sort of break the mood a little bit. I did pull out this record. This is a band called the Stuck Ups. It's a all-girl band from Sympathy for the record industry. This first track, I should actually say before I play it, you know, people like Andy No couldn't exist if they're like their whole fucking model is built on demonizing the left. So basically, people like us are his bread and butter. It's kind of gross, you know, like, and Black Lives Matter activists and indigenous rights activists and trans rights activists that he demonizes, like, he makes money off that. And I think, I don't know about Andy No, but I know with a lot of these fucking people, the reason they hate us so much is because they know they can't fucking hang with us. That we don't want them around, and they're fucking emotionally fucking distraught over it. They want to be in our club and they can't. And the reason they want to be in our club is because it's real. The vast majority of people on this planet are poor and working class. And the vast majority of people on this planet aren't cis hetero white males. The vast majority of amazing arts and culture comes from intersectional communities and diversity, fam, for lack of a less cliche term, but not from high-paid fascist propagandists propping up fucking historic white supremacy and demonizing anyone that would defend our communities from it, that would risk themselves and their own well-being in defense of those more marginalized and more vulnerable than themselves. Like, it's just, I think that this is all indicative of a final collapse. I don't think that this can really be sustained for another decade, let alone decades. And I think that it's really important that we, as leftists, be involved in some type of organizing with some type of anti-capitalist, communist, anarchist group, org, or party, whether it's, you know, joining a communist party or joining a Food Not Bombs collective or some type of, you know, anarchist mutual aid network, or, but it needs to be anti-capitalist, and you need to be organizing and working with other comrades and other anti-capitalist fam, because it's those groups and it's that type of organizing and solidarity that is going to replace these crumbling mechanisms of capitalism. And we're the majority that pieces of shit like Andy No and the other fuckfaces who wishes they could be us are terrified of. And anyway, like I said, I have picked out here, this is the Stuck Ups. The first track is dedicated to those who wish they could be us but never will be, so they hate us. It's called Baby's Got a Heart On. fam. I just want to say much love, thanks, and appreciation to everyone from the Punks for Progress fam. I want to say much love, thanks, and appreciation to you for watching. And as always, much love, thanks, and appreciation to anyone and everyone who does whatever they can, whenever they can, to get up and out in an effort to make life easier for other people, man. It matters, and it makes a fucking difference. All right, fam. Thanks for hanging on the What the Fuck Report. I'm Reverend Aaron. We'll see you next time on Punks for Progress.
To this neighborhood, I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Maybe if I press this button. This is a cassette player with a little cassette in here, and there's nothing written on it, so we'll just have to play it to see what it is. Do you ever imagine things? Are they scary things? Are they scary things? Do you ever imagine things? Things you'd like to have? Did you ever see a cat's eyes in the dark and wonder what they were? Did you ever pretend about things like that before? Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow. Imagine every person that you see is somewhat different from every other person in the world. Some can do some things, some can do others. Did you ever think of the many things you've learned to do? Many things. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow. Did you feel like going like that, like that, like that? Let's give the fish some food. Mr. McFeely, I didn't order any whistle. That's what they call a slide whistle. Did you feel like going like that? There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.
All right, fam. Thanks for hanging. As always, we will see you next time on the What the Fuck Report. Cheers, fam.